Welcome to the first lesson on HTML. Today we are going to cover the very basics. We're going to ask some big questions here, like why am I even learning HTML? How does it work? And what is structural markup? We're also going to do a little example in Notepad and see what we can do with that. So first off, let's go ahead and ask the biggest question I ever have is, why am I learning this? Now, the reason that we want to learn HTML is that HTML is used everywhere on the internet. It is the universal language of the internet. Now, what that means is that all web browsers can interpret it, as opposed to just having multiple different languages that browsers are going to have to interpret. We're going to use one piece of code. Now, the browser is actually going to translate that code and make it look a little bit less like gibberish for us so that we can understand it in a way that makes a lot more sense. One of the limitations of HTML is that it is not a programming language, so you need to use other programming languages like JavaScript to make it interactive and make functions and programs that will add to HTML. So, how does HTML even work? That was a really good question. HTML actually uses tags to tell the web browser how you want your content to be displayed. So if your content is a title, you tag it as a title. If your content is an image, you tag it as an image. It's pretty straightforward. The basic format is to have an opening tag and a closing tag. As you can see, we have our opening tag before the content, and then a closing tag which has a slash in it. Don't be confused, tag is not actually a type of tag in HTML. You would actually want to tag something as a title if it were a title, and not as a tag. So, in that specific instance, as you can see, you would insert your title in between those two tags. The only difference between the opening and the closing tag is that /, and without it, things would probably get pretty confusing for the web browser. The way I like to think about tags is they're like buttons in Microsoft Word. Each button does something different. I want to make the text bold, or I want to make this a heading, or I want to make the size larger. There are tags for all of these things, and we will go over them as they come about. Now, there are quite a few different categories of tags in HTML. However, the largest is structural markup and semantic markup. First, we're going to talk about structural markup. Structural markup controls things like titles, headings, paragraphs, and line breaks. Structural markup controls content that form the structure of your web page. So I always like to think of it as the scaffolding of my web page. It's the supporting structure under which all of my other content will be built around. You can see a couple examples of structural markup tags like HTML, body, heading, title, paragraph. And we're actually going to go ahead and use those in an example. So go ahead and open up your Notepad app. So if we type in Notepad, I'm going to go ahead and open that up. So I'm going to open that up. Now, with Notepad, we can actually do a lot more than just take notes. We can actually save any file as an HTML file. So the first thing we're probably going to want to do is type in HTML. Now that it's an HTML file, we can let the browser know, and that HTML tag is a way to inform it. So the next thing we want to type in is body. That body is just informing the HTML file that we are going to enter the body as opposed to the header or the footer of the web page. We're going to skip the header and the footer for now and just go straight into the body. Now I'm going to put a title on this web page. That title will show up in a rather interesting place. You'll be surprised where it shows up, but it'll make sense when we get to that point. I'm going to name my web page Elephants, because elephants are awesome, and I love to make web pages about elephants. So, I've got my title, which is going to show up in an interesting place. The next thing I'm probably going to put is a heading. So I'm going to type in H1, and then I'm going to write my heading. Why are elephants so cool? Close it out. Now that's going to show up large and bold, which is going to be useful for that big question, which is going to be the basic content of my web page. Now I'm going to go ahead and start typing some paragraphs into this web page. So I do the title or the tag P, And now I'm going to start typing my content. So all I'm typing is just some content that I find interesting. This could be anything. Each of these sentences are going to be one paragraph, or this, not each sentence, but the entire thing in between the opening and closing tag will be considered one paragraph. So, and I'm going to go ahead and close that out pretty quickly, just because I don't want to take too much time typing up meaningless sentences, even though I could go on for days about why elephants are so cool. So that would be my first paragraph. If I wanted to do a second paragraph, I would have to open up a new paragraph tag. Then I could type in something else. So now I have two paragraphs, a heading, a title. Pretty basic web page, but let's keep it simple to start off with. Notice I closed my heading, my paragraph, and my title tags, but I did not close my HTML tags. Probably want to do that. I would like to do that after my web page content. So I go ahead and do that, and now I have it all closed up. Everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file. So let's go to File, Save As. Click on that. Now I'm going to make sure that I have my document knowing where I'm going to be saving it. I'm going to save it in Documents because that's the place that always makes sense to me. Then I'm going to save it as all files because we don't want to save it as a text file, so we'll go to all files. Now I'm going to save mine as my web page 1.html. I had my web page, the other one, so I had to do one. You can save it as whatever you want, but make sure you include the .html. Without it, it will not be saved as an HTML file. So we go ahead and click Save, and that's going to be saved. Let's go into Documents now. Go and open that up. Give it a second. Make it a little bigger. Let's go down, and notice it's a Google Chrome symbol for that that document, my web page 1. So that's because it's going to be opened with Google Chrome. We saved it as an HTML file. The web browser is going to be interpreting that code so we can see it in a different way. So I'm going to double click on it. Give it a second to load up. Of course, it's going to take a while. Got to boot up Google Chrome. Google Chrome always takes a long time. It's got a lot of RAM, takes a lot of processing power. So here it is, though. So we got why are elephants so cool? Looks great. Got a nice big heading. We've got our paragraph down here. We've got two paragraphs. Notice that they are separated by a line, which is what we wanted. There are two paragraphs. But where's my title at? So if I look, it's up in the tab. So it's actually going to be the name of my tab. So that's what you would see the title as. Notice that in our web browser, we actually don't have a www dot here. It is just my file location. Makes sense. That file is stored on my computer and not on a website. So now let's go ahead and summarize what we covered today. HTML is the universal language used to structure and design websites. Uses tags to tell the browser how you want the content to be displayed. It's used to structure the web page in a logical way, and that is known as structural markup. We'll cover semantic markup in a future lesson. And then the last thing we did is we made a little example, and you can use Notepad to test HTML code and load it in a web browser. So thanks, and looking forward to making the next video, and feel free to send me any questions.